It was a warm and quiet night in the village. Rafi, a curious boy with eyes full of wonder, couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, gazing at the stars like he always did, counting them one by one and pretending they were little ships. Then suddenly, a light, soft, greenish blue, and glowing like a fallen star, danced across the rice field behind his house. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't a firefly. It moved. Slow, gentle, and low. Rafi grabbed his sandals and tiptoed outside, careful not to wake anyone. The grass was cool on his feet. Crickets chirped quietly. The night was alive, but still. He followed the glow across the narrow path between fields. And then, he saw it. A small silver object floated just above the ground, no bigger than a car. It shimmered like water under the moonlight. And beside it stood a tiny creature. It wasn't scary. In fact, it looked kind. Its skin glowed softly, and its eyes were big, full of light, like they held the whole sky inside them. The creature looked at Rafi and waved. Rafi blinked. "Hello?" he whispered. The creature placed a hand on its chest and said, softly, "Zeno." Rafi smiled without thinking, and whispered back, "I'm Rafi." The light from the ship pulsed once, slow and warm, like a heartbeat. Then the top opened. Zeno pointed inside, not with words, but with a look that said, "Do you want to see the world the way I see it?" Rafi looked back once at the village, then stepped forward, into the ship. The inside of the ship was nothing like Rafi expected. There were no buttons, no blinking lights, no noisy engines, just soft glowing walls, like they were made of quiet starlight. The floor was warm, like walking on sunlit stone, and the ceiling curved gently above them, transparent like water, showing the stars outside. Zeno moved with ease, floating slightly above the floor. He touched nothing, yet the ship responded to him, shifting gently, humming like a sleeping cat. Rafi stood in the center, eyes wide. Then, without a sound, the ship rose. The ground fell away silently. The rice fields, the house, the village, all faded into a patchwork of quiet night below. And above them, the sky stretched wide and full. But the most surprising thing was, Rafi didn't feel afraid. The ship didn't shake. There was no roar, only stillness. He walked slowly to the edge of the curved window and saw the clouds drift past like soft pillows. The moonlight turned them gold and silver, and every now and then, a shooting star danced across the sky. Zeno hovered beside him. He didn't speak with words. But Rafi felt something, a warmth in his chest. A question. "Where do you want to go first?" Rafi thought for a moment. He pointed to the north. "I want to see the snow," he whispered. "I've never seen snow before." Zeno's glow pulsed once, gently. The ship turned, and like a feather caught in a dream, it moved, faster than anything Rafi could imagine, but so smooth it felt like standing still. Above them, the stars shifted, and far ahead, a faint green glow danced on the horizon. The ship moved like a dream. No jolts, no turns, just a soft shift in the stars, like the world had leaned slightly. Rafi didn't know how far they had gone, but soon, the sky began to change. From deep blue to soft green, then to a shimmering curtain of pink and violet. He gasped. Below them stretched a land of ice, mountains of snow, frozen lakes, and wide plains glowing in moonlight. But above it all danced something even more beautiful. The aurora. Ribbons of light flowed across the sky, like paint brushed by the wind. Rafi pressed his hands to the glass of the ship. "It's like the sky is alive," he whispered. Zeno hovered beside him silently. They slowed down, gently floating above a wide, still valley where no human footsteps had ever reached. Down below, a small family of polar bears curled into the snow, sleeping peacefully beneath the glowing lights above. There were no cities, no roads, only silence and light. And as the ship hovered lower, a quiet sound filled the air, a soft, slow humming. Rafi looked at Zeno. Zeno's eyes sparkled. It wasn't from the ship. It was from the earth. "The snow sings?" Rafi asked, unsure if it was his voice or his thoughts. Zeno nodded slowly. "In this place, so cold and so quiet, even silence can speak." The ship hovered for a while. Just long enough for Rafi to remember what it felt like to be still. To breathe without rushing. To look without needing to name. Then, slowly, the lights above shifted. Zeno turned to him. "Ready?" the feeling asked. Rafi nodded. "Where to next?" He paused and smiled. "I want to see the lights that float on water." Zeno blinked once, and the ship rose. The ship glided far from the snow, following the curve of the world into warmth. The sky deepened again, no longer full of auroras, but of lantern light. Rafi rubbed his eyes as the window turned golden. Below them, a wide, winding river flowed quietly through a dark countryside. And on its surface, thousands of floating lanterns. Orange, pink, gold, some shaped like stars, some like lotus flowers. They moved with the current like drifting dreams. Children and families stood on the shorelines, releasing one lantern at a time, each with a wish glowing inside. Rafi leaned close to the glass. "I've never seen anything like that." Zeno turned his head slightly. The ship began to drift lower, hovering just above the water. They followed the lanterns upstream, where the hills met the horizon. Rafi saw bridges lit with soft candles, small temples glowing under the moon, and people in silence, watching the light, not speaking. Then, Zeno touched the floor gently. A small opening in the ship appeared, just enough for the cool wind to enter. Rafi felt it. The air smelled like flowers, fire, and night. And suddenly, something floated into the ship. A single lantern. It spun gently in the air, its paper thin and glowing. Rafi caught it with both hands. On the side of the lantern was writing. Not in his language, but somehow, he could understand it. "For the ones we miss." Rafi looked up at Zeno, his voice quiet. "Can we send one too?" Zeno's glow pulsed. A new lantern appeared, floating from the wall, blank, waiting. Rafi picked it up, held it to his chest, and whispered something only he could hear. Then he released it. The lantern drifted out through the opening, joining the thousands outside. And for a moment, the whole world seemed to glow with memory. The lantern river faded behind them as the ship rose quietly once more. Rafi sat near the window, still holding the warmth of the moment in his chest. Zeno hovered close, silent as ever, but his glow pulsed a little brighter, as if the ship itself was smiling. Suddenly, the sky turned golden. Not the soft gold of sunrise, but the deep, glowing gold of sand. Beneath them now stretched a vast desert, a land of sweeping dunes and sun-bleached silence. The spaceship descended gently, hovering just above the shifting ridges of sand. Rafi looked out. The wind brushed across the dunes, making the sand ripple like water. But more than that, he heard something. A low humming. It wasn't music. It wasn't the ship. It was the sand itself. "It's singing," Rafi whispered. Zeno nodded. Each gust of wind shaped the hills, and each hill made a different sound. Together, the desert sang, a slow, breathy tone that rose and fell, like a lullaby made by the earth. They floated past tall rock formations, where birds with wide wings soared silently. In the distance, a caravan of camels moved slowly, their shadows long and gentle under the setting sun. And just when Rafi thought the desert couldn't be more magical, he saw a tree. One tree, standing alone, with golden leaves fluttering in the wind. It shimmered like glass, and from its branches hung bells, tiny ones, tied with threads of wind. The ship landed softly near it. Rafi stepped out. He walked barefoot in the cool sand. Not hot, not harsh, just soft and dry, like walking on warm memory. He reached the tree. A breeze passed, and the bells rang. Not loud, not bright, just enough to make him pause and close his eyes. For a moment, there was no ship, no sky, no questions, only sound and silence, together. The desert slowly faded into mist. Not darkness, but a gentle fog that glowed from within, like the world was wrapped in a soft memory. As the ship floated forward, Rafi saw something impossible. Trees. Hundreds of them. Floating. Their roots dangled in the air, brushing against clouds like fingers. Leaves sparkled with drops of dew, and soft lights, like fireflies, danced between the branches. The ship slowed down, weaving between giant trunks that hung in the sky. It was a forest suspended in mist, where no ground existed, only sky, fog, and whispers. Rafi stood quietly near the glass. "It's like they're dreaming," he whispered. Zeno hovered beside him, his glow gentle and low. And then, something moved. A large blue moth, as big as Rafi's head, fluttered past the window. Its wings shimmered like moonlight on water. More followed, moths, birds, glowing butterflies, each with soft trails of light behind them. Then the ship gently opened, and a soft platform of light appeared. Rafi stepped out. He stood on a floating leaf. It held him, weightless and firm. Other leaves floated nearby, some drifting slowly through the air, some carrying flowers, others glowing faintly like lanterns. Everything was alive, but silent, moving, but without hurry. And then, a sound. Rain. But it wasn't falling. It was rising, droplets of water floating upward through the roots of the trees, like memories being returned to the sky. Rafi closed his eyes. The forest didn't ask him anything. It didn't try to teach or explain. It simply let him be still. The floating forest slowly faded behind them, replaced once again by the gentle hush of sky. Rafi sat cross-legged near the window, his heart still full of glowing trees and rising rain. Zeno hovered quietly beside him, as always. This time, they were going up. Farther than before. Past the mist. Past the clouds. Past even the high blue. And then, light. But not from stars. From below. They had reached the edge of night and day. Below them, the earth curved like a giant asleep. Half of it still tucked in night. The other, just beginning to wake. And there, exactly on the line between shadow and sun, was a ridge of ancient mountains. Sharp and silent, like teeth carved from the sky. Zeno slowed the ship, and they hovered over a single peak. The air outside glowed softly, not yet morning, but becoming. Rafi stepped onto the ship's outer platform. The air was thin, but calm. He looked out. Down below, valleys still slept in blue and violet. But ahead, far across the horizon, Light began to rise. A warm orange, then pink, then gold, and then the first ray. It pierced the edge of the world like a gentle trumpet. No sound, just brilliance. Rafi blinked, and for the first time, he felt something small and enormous at once, like a whisper across the whole earth. Zeno floated beside him, unmoving, because some moments aren't for words. They're for watching, for remembering, and for holding close when you need to believe that every tomorrow is still waiting to begin. The sun rose slowly behind them, spreading gold across the mountains and mist. But Rafi didn't want to move. He stood beside Zeno on the edge of the ship's platform, letting the light warm his face, his arms, his thoughts. And for the first time, he understood something. This world, his world, was so much more than what he had seen from the ground. It wasn't just places and shapes and names. It was feelings, colors, silences, wishes, memories. Everything he had seen with Zeno, the auroras, the rivers, the bells, the trees and the clouds, it was all here, part of Earth. Zeno turned to him. No words, just a soft pulse of light, like a heartbeat. And Rafi suddenly knew. It was time to go home. The ship drifted gently, floating back over fields and forests, lakes and rooftops, until finally, it hovered again over the rice field behind Rafi's house. The sky was bright now. Morning birds had begun to sing. The village was waking. Zeno lowered the ship, and the platform opened. Rafi stood still for a moment. Then he looked at Zeno. "Will I see you again?" Zeno's glow dimmed slightly, then flickered, almost like a nod. Rafi smiled. "Thank you." He stepped off the ship. The platform closed, and with a soft hum, the ship rose into the sky, disappearing into the sunlight, like it had never been there at all. But Rafi knew. It had. He stood barefoot in the field, the morning dew cool on his toes, and looked up at the sky. A single leaf from the floating forest drifted down. He caught it, and whispered, "I'll remember everything." Because some journeys don't end when you come home. They begin inside you.